And we wish you, we understand that Paul Ejime is back with us again. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. I hope you can hear me.
Good to have you on the show.
Okay, so Mr. Paul, if you can hear us, yeah. I was initially asking of course, the Nigeria-China trade relations. It's in the news, and President Bola Tinubu, of course, where the President Xi Jinping had a very serious bilateral relations. What's your take on that? As of course, over $1 trillion of investment is already on the table for Nigeria to cash in.
So, well, it was a very good outing by the president, perhaps one of the best since he took over. But my issue with it is that it's not new as such in terms of the China-Nigeria relation. But what has happened is what Nigeria has been able to make. How can Nigeria maximize or optimize some of these deals or this collaboration? Because it's not enough to just sign off on certain things and then do not follow up. Another is also when you are signing up, you look at the conditions so that there are no hidden texts or hidden provisions that could jeopardize the national interest. I think that is where we have to look into knowing the history. You know about some countries that have gone into collaboration or bilateral relations with China, and then they are talking about seizing some assets and all that. But you know that they are collaborating they are good in railway system and then others, so it's welcome news, but what comes out of it, the implementation, is usually the devil.
All right. Well, of course, also from this bilateral relations, Paul, we understand that the China President Xi Jinping pledged $50 billion in aid support to Africa. Now, how far do you think that this aid will go to help Africa?
It's very convenient to throw figures around, but you will also find out that some of these monies are monies that are they are being recycled. They have been pledged for some time, but at times they say, well, because of one or two reasons, they are not, you can't implement, so Africans cannot access it. It's not as tough as any aid or bilateral relation with West, because China is known not to be very, picky about human rights issues and all that. But all the same, it is about what you make of this. It is not as good, for officials to come, exchange pleasantries and exchange notes of agreements. But what comes out of it, that is the outcome, is what should interest Nigerians. This is not the first, and it's not going to be the last. But the point is, what is the impact? What has Nigeria got? What did Nigeria get? What is the need for Nigeria? And how has Nigeria tried to maximize or optimize its own? Because everybody is fighting for their own interests. China, they are not Father Christmas. They know that whatever they are giving, there is a way of getting it back. And so Nigeria should open its eyes widely to make sure that it is not, cutting itself or, just selling itself cheap or giving out, there is equality. You are negotiating as partners, equal partners, and not as, the big one and then the small one. So Nigeria should, and there is nothing wrong in that, in bilateral relations, but what comes out of it, I keep repeating, is what matters. And that is what should interest Nigerians. It's not as the many agreements that are signed or the figure that is involved, but how does that impact the average Nigerian?
Okay.
That is what the focus should be on.
Okay, Mr. Paul, I just wanted to ask this question. You know, there are insinuations in some quarters where they say that the nation has been sold to China. Do you believe this? And it's coming on the back of, you see that from the Bank of China, which is of course financing 85% of the cost of the $5.8 billion Mambila hydroelectric plant, which will be the country's biggest power plant, scheduled to complete in 2030. You know, if you look at the back of that, some people are saying, okay, is it that we are now selling off the nation to China? You know, what's your opinion on that?
I will say, let us not engage in speculation, exactly. But at the same time, to be cautious. You know, be open to receive whether aid or whatever it is, or grants or any support for that matter. But I would rather Nigeria looks at, you know, operating as an equal partner, trade, being competitive. And, you know, it's not, there is no, what do they say? There is no smoke without fire. The insinuation that Nigeria could be selling its property or, you know, undercutting itself come from what has happened in the past. There are some countries where China had, when you fail to, you know, live up to your own part of the agreement, if you default, then that is where the problem comes. For instance, look at the, I'm not saying that they are similar, but it was remember the what is it, presidential fleet, the company seizing Nigerian planes. Such thing can happen if those who are negotiating are not careful and they are not carried away by the razzmatazz of going to see developed Chinese cities. And, you know, if they should put constantly focus their eyes on the ball to know why they are there, that it is for the interest of the common man. And they should not go there and enter into an agreement that will, you know, mortgage the future of Nigerians, of young people, because of these debts are not going to be paid now, is in the future. And you cannot continue to pile up debts that you know you cannot pay. You are now mortgaging the future of your country, of the young ones who are, by the way, they are not employed. After school, many of them are roaming the streets, and there is unemployment. So Nigeria has to be careful not to be amassing debt. What is, let them be amassing wealth. Let them go into production. You know, not just consumption, not just looking up, you know, going with begging bowl. It's interesting. I mean, this is what I don't subscribe to, this idea of so many African leaders going to one country, the capital of one nation, to go and line up and be discussing issues. Why can't they come to Africa? Because you have the China, Africa, Russia, Africa, Europe, Africa, everything Africa. And then you find Paris, France, Africa. The African leaders they should feel ashamed, you know, lining up, looking for validation. That shouldn't be the case. Africa is not zero poor. Africa has the resources. Africa is not poor, but it's poorly managed. And that should end. It's not all the time that you go and you are begging as if you don't have resources. What happens is that some of these resources, the contract is benefiting these individuals and not the state. That is where the problem comes. And that is why you find a situation where some people can shamelessly sign contracts that will virtually sell their own their nations. It can happen with the kind of leaders that we have in Africa. I'm not saying that that is the case here, but they say shine your eyes. That's the local parlance.
Okay, so now that you've highlighted these situations, you know, I was going to ask, the 2024 summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation has ended, and Now, do you think that we can start seeing, because it's very obvious that China is deliberate about what they want to do and benefit from Africa, do you think that Africa can start planning what it intends to benefit from this partnership, Nigeria in particular, where we get benefits of what solves our immediate problem and not something just good? For example, do you think that the light blue rail, is something that solves an immediate problem of an average Nigeria in the current economic situation? So can we start seeing real issues of production, bringing China, since they are good in business and production, to come and help us develop our own market here, rather than constant loans and investments of maybe what would not solve the average man's problem in Nigeria presently?
Well, they say that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You will need to see, and my people, they say that is when you notice the person that will rush the food, the way they wash their hands. So we will need to see this. Seeing is believing. It is not enough. We need to look at it and see, because similar agreements have been signed in the past. What has happened to them? Either they were implemented or were abandoned, or did not live up to the kind of international standard, or were not for the benefit of Nigerians, of the nation, but maybe benefited those who negotiated them or those who signed them. That is what we should avoid. So don't make me a prophet here to begin to tell you whether we are going to see anything. It will depend on those who have signed and then those who are going to implement. China is very clear about what it wants. And that is why, if you are holding, China is a country, of course, very large, but Africa is a continent of about 54 countries. And then you wonder, how are you going to be able to, what was the agenda? So one would rather see a situation where deal with, when you are talking about bilateral issues, yes, that one is easier to manage. But when you bring a continent to come and negotiate with a country, I mean, it's putting argument on his head. So they should stop this idea of going to one country, one nation, one president, hosting many presidents. And at times they put them in one vehicle, one bus to be going around. I think one of the heads of state protested against that. But how can you protest when you were the one that put yourself in that position? Why can't they come? Why don't they come to Africa? African problems will be solved in Africa. Seek African solution to African problem, not carry this into Beijing. And then I'm telling you from experience, some of these people are just there. Some went there for shopping. Some are there distracted. They are not even concentrating on what they are doing. And then these countries, they know it. They will capitalize on that. And then they leave Africa, where it is. That should not be the case. Let Africa open its eyes and negotiate from a position of strength, not a position of weakness, not a begging bowl mentality. Yeah. So to be able to maximize and optimize what they are doing. You can't come here and buy commodities or primary products that give away rock bottom price, and then you go and process it and bring to Africa. Let Africa start processing its own products, cocoa, iron, or whatever it is that they are having.
Mr. Paul,
and if you are entering any agreement, let there be sited factories in Africa. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, I know that you have a lot to say concerning this, and one of the major points for you is that Africa should also start organizing its own
and be deliberate about
the trade bilateral relations should also come down to Africa.